Discover the Women in Tech Trailblazers podcast, hosted by Tiffany and Jordan Franklin. Here, the complexities of being a woman in the tech industry are unraveled through discussions on key issues, personal growth, and how to succeed despite systematic challenges. It's a source of empowerment and inspiration for all women at all stages of their tech careers. Welcome to Women in Tech Trailblazers. We are so excited to be back with you all for another episode today. And I am super excited about the guest that we have here. We have Beth Pittman with us. And if you do not know Beth, I'm going to tell you you're missing out. And I'm not saying that because we're sitting here with her. I'm saying that because I met recently with her for coffee, and we've known each other for a while without really getting to sit down and get to know each other. And it's just incredible the insights that she has for everyone, but definitely women and how she speaks life. So I'm excited to have her here with us today. She is a distinguished human resources leader with over 20 years of experience in talent acquisition across the consumer goods, retail, health, and healthcare sectors. Her career began at Walmart, yay, where she built a strong foundation on recruiting, later rising to senior partner at an executive firm where she led strategic growth and executive placements. In 2020, Beth co-founded Skills Lab Training, which is a firm dedicated to empowering individuals and organizations through career coaching, recruiting services, and leadership development programs. She is a longtime resident of Northwest Arkansas. Yay, NWA. She maintains deep regional connections and serves on the advisory board for UAMS Northwest Arkansas. Beth is a trusted advisor to hiring managers and business leaders, known for her strategic counsel in compensation planning, workforce development, and succession planning. She is also a sought after, and I can highly attest to this, speaker at HR industry events where she shares forward-thinking insights on recruiting and talent trends. Welcome to the show, Beth.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited.
We're super excited to have you. And like we always love to start off, the purpose of our podcast is really to dig in and talk about big topics that matter to girls and women in technology, really bringing awareness to topics that are never talked about and release the authenticity across the space. So that being said, what does authenticity mean to you?
I spent some time thinking about this question because, and I know you ask everybody because I listen to your podcast, so I know it's always the first question. And I was like, what does authenticity mean to me? And, it's changed over the years. When I first started my career, I didn't know who I was, what my vision was, what my goals were, nothing like that. And so as I've gotten older and more experience, I definitely think being true to who I am and what my core values are and how I show up professionally and personally, and just, showing up and being the same way everywhere is a big deal. And that is what authenticity means to me. I mean, I couldn't have told you that, 15 years ago or when I started in my career, because I didn't know what that looked like. And so with that, authenticity brings confidence and you just know a lot more. And so being true to who I am and making sure that I'm showing up the same way across all boards, basically.
I love that because it's a journey, right? Like you talked about, we step into our careers and I wish we had this magic stick that we just knew, right? I mean, I think that we're all in kind of different places and have experienced different things, but I think it's a journey. We don't just day one truly know what that authenticity is. And also, I think it's okay to kind of be figuring that out. But as we're figuring it out, it's really important to share that and our journey with others. And so I'd like to know a little bit with regards to some of the challenges that you faced kind of in your career journey, just your overall personal career journey. We heard it in your bio. You took an incredible path of really starting in corporate, and then branching off to do Skills Lab. And that's really exciting. So talk to us a little bit about what that personal path looked like and kind of what inspired you to take it.
Yeah, it has been a great journey. And so I've had the opportunity to really do some really cool things. And I think one of, some of those things came to me because I just heads down, worked hard. And I always tell, especially new graduates who are starting their job, I'm always like, don't heads down, work hard. I mean, you have to work hard, but you have to also hold your head up. You have to get to know people. You have to network. You have to build relationships. You have to work over those cross-functional teams. And when I first started in tech, I was a recruiter. It was my first recruiting job. So I was new to recruiting. I was new to technology. I didn't even know what IT stood for. I had to look look it up. And so I really had to figure out, how to show up every day and how to be a trusted advisor and have some credibility. And so really thinking about that was what shaped kind of how I, trial and error, trying to figure it out, how I became a subject matter expert in what I do. And then that has helped me continue to move along. I've always tried to continue to learn and grow. And sometimes I don't do that the right way. There's lots of mistakes. But one of the things that Walmart teaches you is after you do something, what's your correction of errors? What is the thing that you're going to learn from and then improve on the next time? And so I've really taken that to heart, and I'm always doing a COE. I will do a COE after this to make sure that, the next time I'm saying the things I want to say and get across the things I want to get across. So I think learning as you go through your career and keeping your head up is a really big deal.
I really like how you said that much nicer than I would have, because I would have been like, I scraped my knees and I figured out how not to do it again, right? Like that would be my response. And so you said it much more eloquently than I could have. But through the years, coming from the HR world too, I really know that has changed a lot. People might think that there's a whole lot more women in our industry than really are, but have you really encountered any gender bias? I mean, with the current landscape that we're facing DEI questions all the time just because of our position and our subject matter expert standing within our positions. What has that really looked like for you over the years?
Well, and it's different things. I mean, as someone who's seen, the ebb and flow of HR over the course of 20 years, 25 years, it's really been, you don't know what the next big thing is yet. You can kind of see it on the path. And so, yeah, when I started in tech, I was one female. There wasn't a lot of women. So I was like, who are all these women that are in tech? And then I would try to get to know them. And then two, I didn't know technology. So I had to really spend, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't trusted. And so I had to really work hard to make sure that they understood that I was on their side. I attended a lot of technical interviews. So I was like, what kind of questions are you asking? What does that mean? What are the answers you're looking for? I started attending their staff meetings, and it took a lot of time, but I wanted them to see me as one of them. And so then my credibility would go up. From an HR perspective, we always want a seat at the table. And I see the trend turning now that we're more of an operator, we're more of the payroll person, or I need to get a position posted, and what does that look like? And so I am constantly trying to stay on the pulse. I had dinner last week with two HR professionals that are in different industries and said, what are you seeing? And there's a lot of anger out there right now because DE&I is going away. They're taking those words away. And so how are they continue to showing up for their teams and for their associates? And so they're using different words, they're using belonging, they're trying to understand kind of what that looks like, but they don't want to be a target. They want to make sure that they are doing the right thing. So I do think that HR has always fought for a seat at the table. And then once we got a seat at the table, a lot of the stuff that they don't want to deal with the people stuff, the layoffs, that obviously is going to fall to HR every time. And so you're seeing kind of a change. I'd be curious to see what y'all think as well, but I'm seeing a change in the way that HR is being treated and how they're just trying to continue to stay at the table, basically.
I think there are certain roles. So HR is one of them, but I personally do governance and it's another one, right?
Yeah.
So there are particular roles and titles in those roles that kind of have a connotation, if you will, that come along with them that people are automatically like, no, this is the police, right? They're the ones that do like all the hard things. But I think overcoming that, which isn't like an overnight thing or it's just a process. But I think overcoming that is exactly what you said. It's about relationships. Like, are you able to build authentic relationships with those people? So instead of you trying to make your seat at the table, you're invited to the table. So like when they know Beth is like not here to like go back and report all the things that are wrong, but to like help us guide our conversations and guide what we're doing with our associates in the right way. So everyone does feel empowered, right? Like the strongest teams are the ones that are the most diverse, are the ones that feel empowered. And those people do more than you even ask. But we haven't figured that out. It's just like, do this, focus on the money. And yes, we all want to make money, but you will make more money if you focus on your people first. And so those relationships are key. I think we as women, so we're just going to go here, okay? Because we just are. We as women, I think, and I'm making a general statement, so there's a spectrum here, but I think like us really prioritizing ourselves, and I don't just mean by like the spa and getting our nails done, like self-care in that way, because while those things, yes, are important, I'm really referring to us being able to prioritize ourselves even in our career and to truly know and understand the value behind upskilling. And I know that's a lot of like what you're focused on and what you do. How have you really seen like the need to, number one, prioritizing the upskilling for all of us, but especially for us as women? And then how has that really, like, how have you seen that change your confidence? We talked about confidence earlier, and really help you open new doors in tech as you kind of entered the industry.
Yeah, I think women are trying to do so much better in helping, the other woman behind come up. And that's, that is so great. But I think what I have seen is that when a woman, and I started really tracking this last year because I was really interested in seeing how it affected people. But when we offer executive coaching, we have a tremendous executive coaches. They are one thing I can do is I can hire people, and I've hired the best. Like, we have really excellent executive coaches. And so I noticed that every time they coach someone, the person that they coach, typically female, wanted to pay for the services themselves. And I said, why do you want to pay for the service yourself? And they said, well, I feel like I'm getting a lot of leadership development that's going to take me to another job. And I said, they're paying for you to have this leadership training for you to help you in your job today and tomorrow, whatever tomorrow looks like. And so, one, they always want to pay for it themselves. And I always discourage that as much as possible. Like, let your company pay for it. And then two, they either, one, are able to handle usually they come to us with a situation they're trying to handle, but almost every one of them has either gotten a promotion or has moved to a new job. And so when we started looking at that, it came back down to confidence. They were confident in their ability to make decisions, to have conversations, to, ask for the next thing that they were looking for in their career. And so I said, there's something here. And as I started digging around, every person that I met with, and I did this with Tiffany, I said, do you have an executive coach? Are you working with someone? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is, yes, I've worked with an executive coach. And so when you start thinking about what that looks like, it really was eye-opening for me. Your kid wants to take piano lessons. We don't ask them to teach themselves. We get them a coach. We get them a piano teacher. Your kid wants to be a better baseball player. And so you're going to sign up for hitting lessons because you don't want him to not be able to hit the ball. And then 2 years later, they stop. But we've spent all this money trying to get them to be a better hitter, but we don't spend the money in our career that's going to bring us more money in the long run. It's going to help us with our career and what that looks like. I had a meeting yesterday. I was working with the board of directors and discussing to them about boards and training and all that kind of stuff. And she said, one of the ladies said, I'm really looking for help in my leadership development on my team. And I said, do you work with a coach? And she said, no. And I said, do you know that most executives, the majority, probably 99%, have a coach that they work with? And she said, I had no idea. And I said, yeah, when they are thinking about going to that next level, or they have a situation with someone on their team, they're not talking to their peers because it's probably about their peers. They're not talking to their subordinates, and they're not talking to their manager about it. So they're talking to someone that they've paid that can help them navigate that and then can help them continue to move on the path. And we're not talking about that as women. We are not talking about that. We want people to think that we got there on our own, which is great, but a lot of times you didn't. And so people know about mentorships. They're like, oh, I have a mentor. They helped me get here. Well, a mentor is a short relationship. This coach, you're paying a coach, and when you are paying somebody, there's an accountability there, and you want to see those results so you move a lot faster. And so
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, Women in Technology of Northwest Arkansas and Gumption at my-gumption.com for their support. Their contributions are critical in bringing these meaningful conversations to you. Stick around for more engaging discussions right after this break.
I really feel like people need to be looking at that type of coaching for leadership, and the confidence that comes out of that has been eye-opening, has been really significant. We had one lady who was doing a great job. Her organization had asked her to step up for an interim role, and this was something she called us afterward and said, "Hey, I asked for more money during the interim role." And we were like, "You would have never done this." Yes, we were so excited for her. But I said, "You would have never done this, 6 months ago. And we wouldn't have even thought about it." She would have just done the role and moved on. And so this created a level of confidence in her that she was able to, I'm going to ask the question. The answer may be no, but I want them to know that I'm paying attention. I'm asking the question.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Like, we all talk about mental health, but that coach is a mental health thing,
Yeah.
right? Because you can't just hold it in. You can go tell your girlfriends that they don't understand, or your guy friends, but they don't really understand because they're not in your situation. But when you have a long-lasting relationship with somebody that you feel comfortable with, right? And I mean, most of the time it's paid, right?
Yeah.
But that's because then they sit there and they dive into what you want, where you want to go, how are we going to get you, and you are their main focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus in a situation of like gossip, I guess, right? You're not necessarily, I mean, you might be your best friend's main focus, but they're also not understanding the whole picture because
Right.
they're getting it and they might only understand until the second glass of wine, right? Like it just is what it is. It's not
Yeah.
like you're having a meeting about it and being intentional, right? Where a lot of people are very intentional about like mental health. I saw a psychologist for a while and he was like, you need a career coach. He was like, you come in here and you fuss about career, and this is not mental, this is career. Like, you just need to get over your next career hump. And I was like, okay. So, but I totally agree. And seeking that right help, right? Like seeking that right person, and it's always a fit. And you've got to find the right coach for you. I tell my husband all the time, I said, I don't like a football coach. I like a golf coach. Like tweak it here, tweak it there, and you're going to get it straight down the fairway. But if you're going to yell at me, I'm going to turn around and be like, bye. I'm done with this. So like, I really think that there's the right person for you. And then I really love that you said that she went back and asked for money during that interim. I was having a conversation the other week and someone was going up and they were moving up internally. And I was like, well, if they're posting the job, then you should be able to ask for whatever you want. Everyone else is. And she didn't even think that direction, right? Like, I think she had like a thought about it, but then she was like, oh, I'm going to be intentional about this. And those kind of things, right? Like, we really got to understand not only as women, as men too, right? Even if you're just moving up within your organization, there's always that opportunity. You're already at no if you haven't asked.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So you might as well ask because you're just going to be at ground zero again if they say no. Like there's no hurt feelings there. Yeah, I love that. That just
Really
made me
quick,
very happy. All the things.
I know you're gonna go to the next question, but I want to say something really quick on that. Okay, you know what I love? That we're talking about upskilling, and I'm sure everybody's first thought was like she's gonna start talking about certifications. But before we ever went to any of that, because that's the reality, right? Like if you say upskilling in any type of tech environment, it's automatically like what training, what certifications. But investing in yourself, again, just like it's more than self-care, it's also not just certifications. Like certifications can get you so far.
Yeah.
However, the reality is like next level career is making an investment in yourself with things like we're talking about right here. Like someone that yes, you're paying, but that's because their accountability there. Like this is their job. Like they're investing in you because it's their job. And again, I'm sure like they're great people with mine have been like with great personalities and they really do relationships well. But this is an investment you choose to make in yourself, and you choose to go pay hundreds and thousands of dollars for your next certification. So you just need to look at all aspects of what upskilling really means. It's not just the certification. And so I just really love that the conversation didn't immediately go to that, because that's usually the thought. But there's so much more with regards to investing in yourself.
I really think it's like you can't love others until you love yourself. Well, you can't invest in others until you realize what it really takes to invest in yourself. And you can't expect those things. I feel we've all been young in our careers, and you see that you see that mom or you see that dad, and you're like, I'm working 80 hours or I'm working 60 hours and I don't have a family yet, right? Like, why aren't you? And then you have a family and you're like, oh,
I
wait.
know now.
Oh, now I know, right? Like, you can't know what you're expecting from your team until you expect it from yourself. And I think that really goes along with that coaching, right? Like the accountability, especially when you're towards the top of an organization or towards the top of a team, like you're holding yourself accountable, but if you have a coach, now you have someone else that's holding you accountable, and it's harder to not succeed that way because they're pushing you. I love that. Okay, so talking about certifications, Tiffany brought it up. Great segue. So, what else do you think that people could invest in themselves? I think we've talked about that, but what about like certifications? What
Yeah.
skill sets are you seeing that are really going to be needed, not only now, but in the future?
Yeah, so certifications are great. And I think you have to think about where I want my career to go, and then what kind of certification is going to help me get there. So yes, absolutely. If you need a certification to get to that next level, absolutely consider that and look at that. But if you don't have any money to spend, how else can I get to that next level? How can I upskill in myself? And so this is a perfect example. Podcast is one of my favorite things. You are able to hear industry experts that you would have never gotten to hear talk about their journey, or CEOs and how they got there and what that looks like. So take advantage of podcasts. I think that is really underutilized, and I always have a podcast going. Like, I love it. That's free. And then books, you can read books, and you can be, we had a business book club one time because I love reading business books. And so nobody wanted to talk to me about it. So I'm like, I'm starting a business book club. And we loved picking those books apart. It was so fun. So that is something else that you could do. And you can you don't have to take everything. You take one little nugget and then you apply that. What is it like? Get 10% better every day. These are real practical things. The other thing I would tell you to do is get an advisory board. Get those group of friends maybe that you've worked with 100 years ago and that, are in different industries now, but they care about you as a person, and just, they're going to support you when you've laid off and when you get a promotion. So you should have an advisory board that can, brainstorm or, roundtable a topic and what that looks like. One of my other favorite things is definitely associations and organizations. If you are not in Women of Tech, get in it. You are putting out great content. You're having great conferences. It is so wonderful. If you don't have a Women in Tech or an industry association in your location, start one. There is nothing that says you can't start something. And so I always tell people, if you're a project manager, if you're administrative assistant, project manager, whatever, there's an association for you. And there are people pouring into those groups that are just so talented. And so don't be afraid to look at that as well. Let me see. I wrote down some other things. Oh, and then mentorship. If you don't have a mentor, and it's intentional, everything has to be intentional. You have to think about, what is this really bringing me? What kind of questions do I have? So really be intentional about that mentorship relationship.
I love that. I think it's just really important to take a step back. I think from the beginning of time, we haven't really been fed holistically that investing in ourselves, like we've kind of felt like that was a little bit selfish, right? And that we should really focus all our time and energy on everyone else. And so I'm glad that we're having the conversations and not just in here and there pockets. I'm glad we're having conversations that are broadcasted where we're talking about the need to do this. I mean, ultimately, you own your life and you own your career, right? There are only so many things you can control in life. A lot of it you can't. Yeah. So for me, I always say, figure out what you can control, and that's where you spend your energy. The other things, you're just going to need to roll with it. So a lot of life is rolling with it, but your career, you own that. Like no one else owns that. You get to decide what tables you're going to eat at. You get to decide and know your value and worth. You get to show up with a confidence. You get to ask for the money. You get to decide, like if you, I say this all the time. we convolute business and personal. And so the reality is we are all numbers on a company's balance sheet. Okay. That's a reality.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I think most of us realize that. The part that I think we really don't realize is they are also a number on our balance sheet, right? And so when you need to make strategic career moves, or you need to make more money, or whatever that looks like for you, ultimately more than one company exists. We get this whole like, listen, I'm all about some loyalty. However, like, don't confuse it for what it's not. We are a number, they are a number, and we'll come and we'll do really great work, but you need to make sure that you know what you're worth, that they know what you're worth, and then refuse to stay at tables where they don't know what you're worth. I think is really important. I hate this part because we're coming up on time, but I have one final question for you. So just from a woman, from an incredible woman doing incredible things in our community and just overall, I'd like to really know, what piece of advice would you leave our listeners to really start using what's at their fingertips, using the upskilling, focusing on how they can make themselves just a little bit better, like you said, 10% than today. But what one piece of advice would you leave?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I actually have two pieces of advice. One is start today. It is, we always think, well, when I get my resume done, I'll apply for that job. And then the resume never gets done, which you should always keep your resume updated. That's a whole nother platform. But so one is start today. And then the other one is never too late to start. It doesn't matter if you're in your 20s, if you're in your 30s, if you're in your 40s, if you're in 50s, whatever. It's never too late to start. With the way our world moves today, everything is so fast. And so starting today, and it's not too late. Those are two things that are so critical in today's world. And so we learned this the hard way. We are perfectionists. My partner, Christy Martin, and I, when we started Skills Lab, we were like, the website has to be perfect. The logo has to be perfect. Nobody looks at the logo. People are looking at the website. We're like, we just got to get it started. We're going to fail up. We're going to review all of the things that we've done wrong, but we do progress over perfection. It's one of our mantras. And then the other one is start today. You have to be able to start today, because tomorrow is not promised. And it just, that little 10% of, okay, I'm going to get my resume out and I'm going to update it today, or I'm going to check out a book, or I'm going to download the Women in Tech podcast. When you think about those things, they're easy and it's not so overwhelming. And then it's never too late. Like, I talk to women, men too, all the time in their 50s who say, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So let's dissect that and see what that looks like, because it's not too late to change.
Yep. I have to add to that because that was so good. I hate when I have conversations with people and they're like, but they're going to see that I'm older. And I'm like, who cares?
Yeah.
Well, they're going to see that I'm changing. Okay. Like, who cares? Find what you love and what you're passionate about, and you're going to do great at it. Like, because you're passionate about it. But it really doesn't matter how old you are to make that change. Okay. That's my soapbox too. I'm on it with you there, Beth.
Oh, or young too, right? Because it kind of goes both ways. Some people are like, they may see me as too young. And I do think that exists. However, what they're not going to see is how young or old you are. What they're first going to see is the confidence that you walk into the room with. So if you're already focused on I'm too young or I'm too old, then don't expect them to also not be focused on that, because you've already given off, like, even if you don't say the words, you carry what it is that you think and feel about yourself. So that this job is mine. I own this. I'm going to walk into that interview. I'm going to walk into that room and I'm going to do my best. And your best is also good enough. Like, sometimes we end up in places or roles or however that aren't a good match for us. And then we just feel super defeated all the time because, like, we're not doing the best at it. Okay, well, I encourage you to like, do a lot of what we're talking about. Explore on who you really are and what you're supposed to do, because that's the only time you're ever really going to excel, right? Otherwise, you're just going to feel defeated all the time. No confidence. You're never going to ask for anything because you just feel like somebody, like you owe somebody something. No, you don't. You go to work. You work really hard. You don't owe anyone anything. You get paid a paycheck, right? So thank you, Beth, so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Fun.
This has
been
a lot of fun.
So many nuggets. I just want to go process and regurgitate. To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you for following us. Thank you for consistently listening to all of the topics. Like, the reason we started this podcast was not just to have another one. We've talked about this before. We do this to really talk about topics that we really aren't talking about. I mean, we might here and there with a glass of wine or with a friend or maybe here and there with a coach. But I mean, the reality is, like, these are topics we need to be honing in on so we can continue to advance. And so just grateful to each and every one of you as listeners, and to you, Beth and Jordan.
Yay. Thanks. Subscribe, follow, check all the things, all the clicks. Can't wait to see you next time.
Well, that's a wrap. Another episode of Women in Tech, Trailblazers podcast. Thanks for tuning in and sharing this time with us. If you liked what you heard, please share this episode with your friends in tech. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. Your support helps us keep bringing in inspiring guests and uncovering topics that matter to you. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries and making your mark in the tech world. Goodbye for now.